This is an incredibly consequential election. I know SEMA is following it very closely. In terms of the presidential, what are you guys looking at?
So one of the best things about our industry is the innovation. And the fact is that, again, SEMA has always maintained a technology neutral position. Government should remain technology neutral when it comes to deciding what powers our automobiles. And the industry, members in the industry have really gone gangbusters in the EV space, converting ICE to electric vehicle propulsion systems, to the work that members have done in hydrogen ICE, as well as all the different fuel blends and things that are being done in all of the sectors. So that's the one really awesome thing about our industry is the advancement of technology. And so that's something that, we had to balance this out in terms of how we looked at this presidential race. But, when I every time I sort of sit back and think about it, this was a fight that was brought to us. We didn't pick this fight. The fact is that we've been on the forefront of innovation, and we want to continue to see that innovation happen. And when one technology is chosen over all others, it effectively shuts down the innovation. The innovation that has made this industry great. I think about an early 1980s Corvette that maxed out at 140 horsepower. Yet today's Corvette is, I don't even want to say the numbers because I know I'm going to get it wrong and someone will put it in the comments. But the fact is that we're able to do that with a lower carbon footprint, with a lower emissions profile. And that's both on the OE side, but also on the aftermarket. In all of the technologies that we're an industry that always does more with less. And so the fact is that the federal policies that have been put in place with regards to the EV mandates essentially shuts down our ability to continue to innovate in all of these other ways, and really just puts the thumb on the scale of one technology over all others. So I think, this is one of those cases where an issue that's important to SEMA, and one of the key legislative issues that we've been dealing with, both on the regulatory side as well as legislative, is the issue around EV mandates. So normally our issues aren't a matter of presidential debates or headline grabbing in context with the presidential race. But this is one of those years. This is a unique year in the fact that an issue that's so critically important to the industry is really going to be decided as to who controls the White House. So it's not really our thing to get involved in a presidential election. It's not our thing to, sort of take one side or the other. But this is a position where we're kind of backed into a corner. I think the Biden-Harris administration has been very clear of where they want to go with regards to these EV mandates, which is very much contrary to SEMA's perspective, which we believe that government should be technology neutral when it comes to regulations around automotive emissions. So it's been very clear where Vice President Harris is versus where former President Donald Trump is and was. I think the contrast there, again, this is not an opinion of ours, but the contrast is very much there in terms of the black and white printed media and in the words that they've said. Donald Trump has said we're part of sort of getting rid of the EV mandate is sort of one of his day one actions that he's looking at if he returns to the White House. We also saw during his tenure started in 2016, that he did a lot within the energy industry of pulling back some of this overreach that we've seen with the EPA. So while that didn't impact our industry directly, I think it sort of demonstrates his record of how he looks at the role of the EPA. And now our issues are sort of front and center. Our issue is front and center. Contrast that with Vice President Harris. It's her administration, as a vice president, where the EPA has installed these mandates. But then she was also a co-sponsor of legislation during her time in the Senate before she became vice president, where she supported 100% EV mandate. So again, it's one of those things where we're in this unique position that the issue, a SEMA issue, is really at the forefront of the presidential campaign. But also it's very clear where the candidates stand on the issue for one that's going to impact a big part of our industry. 33% of the SEMA industry, of SEMA members, are ICE dependent, internal combustion engine dependent. When you look at that from our industry's impact to the U.S. economy, we're a $337 billion impact to the U.S. economy, 1.3 million jobs. When you talk about, just say, roughly 30% of that going away in a very short time, this is a very short time frame, the full federal regulations kick in by 2032, 33% means over $100 billion of economic impact to the U.S. economy is going to be impacted from our industry and those that are attached to the internal combustion engine technology. Translating that to jobs, that's over 300,000 jobs that are going to be impacted largely by small businesses, which is what comprises our membership. So we don't like to be in the business of picking presidential candidates, but this is one where the industry really has had to take a stand.
That's a great point, Karen. It's fascinating how this presidential race has really found SEMA by this being somewhat of a binary choice in terms of where the two parties are at.
Yeah, good or bad, the distinction is very clear. SEMA has started a super PAC. We actually started it last year in Virginia, in which we were able to repeal Virginia's attachment to the California emission standards. Ultimately, because of some of the work that we did in the elections there, in their state elections. And so we've taken that effort to the federal elections, and specifically the presidential, as well as some of the key Senate and House races we talked about, but really educating voters about this issue of EV mandates, because this is one of those things, we live and breathe it every single day. But one of the things that we know from research that we've done, from just what we've seen, and it's not just our own internal polling, but what we've seen in public polling, is the fact that American voters, once they understand what this mandate means from a cost perspective, from a freedom perspective, from a freedom of choice perspective, this is really a big issue. And so we've taken on the task of helping educate voters in key districts in the battleground states. And so again, an issue that is very clear where each of the candidates stand. It is so incredibly important to vote, especially in a state where you have early voting, you're able to do by absentee. It is critical, and it's easy to say, yes, I'm going to go vote, but then you get distracted. Everyday life happens, and but at the end of the day, we've all seen those races where it has come down to just a handful of votes, and there's probably a lot of people kicking themselves saying, oops.
Yeah, with over 1 million people who work in the industry, it's so important that we make our voices heard in the political discourse, and no date is more important than Election Day. There are ample opportunities, right. As you said, if you're going to be out at the SEMA show, make a plan to vote ahead of time. It's so incredibly important, especially when these races, some will come down to hundreds of votes. Yeah.